Today, we're going to take fresh new installed VS Code and convert it into best possible PHP working environment. We're going to install a couple of useful extensions. We're going to configure settings, code snippets, key map, and shortcuts. And we're going to install a nice theme, which is my personal preference. Hello everyone, my name is Ura and I am the Codeholic. On this channel, I share my 10 plus years of experience working as a professional software developer. So if you are new here, consider subscribing. Before we jump into video, I want to ask you one small thing. I have been working on this video for a few weeks, researching extensions, experimenting, modifying, and I spend a lot of time. If this video is helpful for you, please don't be lazy and click the like button, because that's going to really help the YouTube algorithm to promote my video and suggest it to others. Let's start first installing basic extensions which are not necessarily connected to PHP, but really useful one if you are working on PHP. Many people ask me which theme I use for VS Code or which icon theme I use. So let's go in the extensions and I'm gonna look for community material theme. This is the first one. Okay, this is the theme I use. I'm gonna click install. By the way, there is another theme which is called material theme, simply material theme, but this one, material theme, basically includes community material theme as well as material theme icons. However, I don't want this material theme icons, I want material icon theme. So I'm going to click install right here and I'm going to set material icon theme as my icon theme. If I go in the Explorer and let's open any folders, basically I'm gonna open my PHP MVC framework, and right here you see that the icons are already changed. Let's change the theme, color theme, and I generally choose community material theme Palinite with high contrast. So the theme is ready. What next? I'm going to install a live server. The live server is really useful extension to easily serve your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. Today's sponsor is PHP Tools for VS Code extension. The extension has several built-in features using which it stands out from any other extension for PHP. The creator's ultimate goal is to create a single extension for VS Code that will be packed with every necessary feature a PHP developer might need. Besides the basic features like auto-completion, code formatting, go-to definitions or declarations, code actions, symbol search, and many others, it already supports a few unique features like built-in debugging support, possibility to search for Todos in entire project, full customization for Docblock elements for classes, functions, and pretty much for anything, full unit testing support. One of my favorite features is code length. It helps to immediately see how many times your functions, classes, or properties are used, and by clicking on it, you can navigate to usages. Renaming, refactoring. You can rename your variables, properties, functions, and classes, and they will be renamed everywhere. Probably the best thing in this extension is that they have very strong support and development team. They have dedicated forum on which I posted my problems, and as a fact, they fixed the problem the next day. They are using freemium pricing. Many features are free, but some of them are paid. You can have 30 days free trial for premium features and buy only after you make sure it's good enough for you. Use the coupon code ZURA to get 10% discount. Alright, the next one I want to install is Auto Close Tag. This one is really handy as well. It automatically closes HTML or XML ending tags. The other one is auto rename. This automatically renames the closing tag if you rename the opening tag. Okay, the next one I want to mention is code spell checker. This one basically will put an underline on your words that you have typo there and here, and you can fix that. Let me open in this case controller, site controller, and go in one of the actions, let's say right here, and I'm going to declare a variable, for example, kernel access token. So as you saw, I made few mistakes right here, and let's say this is 1, 2, 3. I made a mistake right here. It should be personal access token, not kernel, and it underlines right here. So it tells you that there's a problem, unknown word personal, and you have a quick fix right here. You can change this into personal or perns or whatever. So it has a couple of options. It has its own dictionary. So I'm going to set this into personal access token, and the underline basically disappears. Also, if you mix your writing style, like this one is a camel case notation, but if you miss and like the token is all lowercase, then it also underlines right here, but I'm going to change this into token, and you see now the underline goes. So basically this gives you a hint that you have something wrong, and it forces you to start thinking about how to change that. Okay, this is really handy. Another one is Prettier, the most popular formatting extension. It supports most of the languages, and if you want to support your HTML or CSS or JavaScript, then this is the extension you should be using. Okay, the next one is relatively new one, but it got really popular, and I wanted to include in my video as well because it's a really good client, REST client to work with API. Rapid without space API. Here it is. Okay, this is Postman-like REST client, which gives you possibility to define your requests. Let's click right here. Okay, it gives you possibility to define your requests, save the request, define, of course, headers and body, and make the requests. And also, it gives you possibility to sign in and sync your requests across multiple devices. And it finally gives you a possibility to generate your code snippet for your desired language, okay, which is, I think, like fantastic. Okay, the other one is TODO Highlight. This is really small one, but really useful. TODO Highlight. So let me install this, and let's go in the site controller, and I'm gonna, let's delete this, and I'm gonna define right here a single to-do with colon. As you see, it already highlighted right here. So the TODO Highlight has two keywords to highlight. One is TODO and second is fix me, and it gives you highlighting in different styles. The next one is .env. If you have .env file in your project, no matter if it's a PHP or Node.js or Python project, then you must have this extension. Let's open my env file. It gives you syntax highlighting, and if you have some comments right here, then the comments are grayed out. Basically, it gives you syntax highlighting on keys and values as well. The next one is EditorConfig. The EditorConfig is really a necessary file in your project. If you don't know what is an EditorConfig, check my video in which I explain what is EditorConfig and configure the project to have the best EditorConfig settings. And I really recommend simply to have this extension. The other one is Code Runner. The Code Runner is one of the most popular extension, over almost 15 million downloads, and it gives you a possibility to select a piece of code and execute it immediately. The next one is WSL. So basically right now I have the folder opened on Windows from Windows file system. However, now I'm going to open my VS Code into WSL. So I'm going to close this. Let's open Ubuntu. Here it is. I'm going to navigate into www folder, and right here I have a folder PHP MVC framework. So I'm going to open this. Now we have opened this project from WSL path. But that's not what we want. We want to open VS Code inside Windows Subsystem Linux. By the way, if you don't know how to set up WSL on your Windows with Docker, check my other video, which describes everything like step-by-step instructions how to install Docker and WSL in Ubuntu and make your project up and running. Okay, now let's go in the extensions, and I'm gonna install WSL. So let's click right here and click install. And now we have a few options right here. We can get started with remote, or we can open remote. We also have possibility to reopen the same folder inside WSL. In fact, if we click the bottom left corner open remote window, we can click reopen folder in WSL, and I'm going to choose Ubuntu distro because I have my files and folders inside Ubuntu, and this will open VS Code inside WSL. And now you see right here, we see WSL Ubuntu. And if we go in the extensions right now, we see that we have locally installed 11 extensions, but inside WSL Ubuntu, we don't have anything. In fact, for some of the extensions, we have to install inside WSL as well. For example, Code Runner, Code Spell Checker, and so on. We have to install inside the WSL as well to be able to use them properly. Okay. However, I'm going to go back into file system without WSL. Now let me choose this folder, and I'm going to install few PHP extensions right now. Quick pause right here. The only thing I ask for is like, subscribe, and share. But if you really love my content and want to do something even more, check my donation pages, Patreon, and buy me a coffee. I really appreciate every single cent you donate. And it's gonna give me much more motivation to keep creating free educational content. I also created Discord server, which is at the moment only available for my Patreons. So as soon as you become a Patreon, you will have access to the Discord server on which you can ask your questions, post your problems, and I will personally assist you there. Sorry for interruption. Let's get back to the video. There are two extensions for PHP in VS Code, which in my opinion are really useful, and both of them have very similar features, but they have some differences as well. For example, PHP Intelephense, which is a freemium extension, it has a couple of useful features inside the free version, and it has some of them inside premium. The second one is PHP Tools. It has also very similar features like auto-completion, code formatting, go-to definitions and declarations, etc. But PHP Tools has some of the great features which are not presented in PHP Intelephense, like integrated generics support. It has built-in debugging support. PHP Tools has also built-in unit testing support. It has possibility to search Todos inside the whole project and few others. PHP Tools is a slightly new extension. It has like 400,000 downloads at the moment. They also have like freemium pricing. Some of the features are free and some of them will be paid. At the very moment while I'm doing the recording, every feature basically is free, but I think it's just a matter of days. They will add restriction to some of the features inside the extension. My recommendation is to have a look at both. Both are great. Both have really useful features. They are both are like more or less stable. Try both and then choose which one you prefer. The downside of the PHP Tools is that their pricing model is slightly different compared to PHP Intelephense. They have annual subscriptions, and PHP Intelephense has like forever subscription. Once you buy it, you don't have to pay for anything else. So just try it, install both. I think both are great. I'm going to install PHP Tools, and I'm gonna go with it and like configure a few things. I'm gonna mention that PHP Tools comes with two more extensions. So when you install PHP Tools, it's gonna install Composer extension as well as PHP Profiler extension. Let me open Composer.json, and at the top right here we see install and update buttons, and those were added by the Composer extension. Also, if I start typing of the package name, it starts suggesting me, and on the left side it also shows me how many stars or downloads the package has. So whenever you choose the package, then when you start choosing the version, it's going to also suggest your version. It also shows you what is the version of the package you have installed locally. This is really handy. Even if you choose PHP Intelephense, I think you should install Composer extension. It's really handy. Okay, now let's go in the customization. I'm going to open settings and let's actually search for Docblock. And right here we see possibilities. We see settings to customize our Docblock extensions for classes and functions and for pretty much anything. So I'm going to copy the following code, this piece of code, and click Edit in Settings, and let's put this right here. Okay, and I'm going to change the name to be the Codeholic, lowercase o, and let's put comma right here and the copyright for the current year. I'm going to save this, and now let's open like login form, my PHP class, and let's move at the top, and I'm going to delete this, And let's create now generate Docblocks. So I have to type slash and asterisk 2 times, and it generates the code for me. And we see that the author is the Codeholic and copyright is the current TR. And we see some text, which of course we can modify. This Docblock annotation basically works for functions as well. As you see, it identifies what type of result we return as well. Okay, this works on classes and functions and pretty much for anything. However, this one to work, we have to go to the settings and find an option format on type. And make sure this setting is ticked, because without that, it's not gonna simply work. Okay, when you type slash and asterisk 2 times, it's not gonna create that code for you. So you have to have these settings. Another really unique feature of PHP Tools is that when we open the command palette and type search to do, it's going to show us all the to-dos we have available. So we can click on any of them and navigate there. Again, one great feature is that it reports all the problems we have inside the project. Like right here, for example, when I double click on this, it opens the layout and it tells me that inside the layout you're using this keyword, which probably is not the correct way of using that. So it gives you reports your problems, and you can basically have a look at the problems and maybe fix them. Okay, so we have the extension which gives us like a code formatting and syntax highlighting and auto-completion. If I move up and remove all the usages, for example, and then scroll down, we see that the classes are now underlined, and I click on this and we see this bubble. I click this bubble and we have quick fixes like I can use, which will add the use at the very top, and I can create the whole namespace right here, the fully qualified name right here, or we can set this into keyboard. Like I think by default it's Control and comma. We're gonna adjust the keyboard shortcuts as well. So I think this extension is really cool, and it has also renaming and refactoring. So if I open login form and just click on this, actually I already have that renamed, so I rename this into login form, and it's going to be renamed basically in every places where it is used, like right here. Okay, if I just rename this into my login form, and then it's going to be renamed right here as well. Okay, so we have like all-in-one extension at the moment, which gives us exactly what we want. So what should we do next? So I recommend to install PHP Awesome Snippets extension, and basically get used to, this is the extension, and get used to code snippets, because code snippets boost your productivity. Okay, get used to these ones, create your own code snippets, then try to use your desired keyboard shortcuts, create settings which are suitable for you, and that's gonna shift you to a different level of coding, and that's going to definitely speed up your productivity. Okay, now let's open the same folder inside WSL. So let's choose WSL path, and let's reopen the same folder in WSL. And basically the extensions what we have installed in VS Code, most of them we have to install in WSL as well. So if we go in the extensions, we see that we have 15 extensions installed locally. Most of them are general extensions for web developers, and we have some of them for PHP. And as you can see, let's have a look, WSL Ubuntu, there are 0 extensions installed in WSL Ubuntu. Okay, so we can go and click install in WSL buttons for those extensions, so that them to be installed in WSL as well, and we have the same experience in VS Code in WSL as we have on local file system. Okay, now since we have all the necessary extensions, let's focus on creating our own code snippets. How to do that? Let's click on the settings, and right here we have configure user snippets. I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to choose PHP, and I'm going to click choose the PHP, and right here I can configure my own code snippet. Uncomment this, and let's write text here, create var dump. That's it. The prefix which should trigger should be dump, inside body, I'm going to specify echo opening pre-tag. Then right here, we need the cursor. We need var dump, inside which we need cursor. And then we're going to have another echo with closing pre-tag. Okay, and we can give it a description as well for dump. Let's save this and now go in the site controller. And I'm going to write dump and hit the enter. And as you can see, it created the following snippet with echo pre and var dump. Okay, I think this is really handy. And I just showed you how you can create your own code snippets. You can write them right here. However, speaking about code snippets, there's also one thing you should know. We have just created a code snippet for PHP. However, if you have a fresh new PHP file, and I'm going to create test.php right here, let's say we want to create the following code snippet, okay? If I just create the snippet in the PHP JSON, that's not going to simply work. We need to create a new global code snippet. And I'm going to call this PHP, and I'm going to uncomment this code. And right here, I'm going to create PHP global, and let's give it a scope to be PHP, and I think that's it. And the prefix, let it be PHP if, as simple as that. So this is going to be the first line. Then we have right here another line, which should be an empty, and then another one right here. Okay, and the cursor should be, first cursor should be right here, and second should be right here. Okay, and let's give it also description PHP if. So we save this now, and I'm going to type PHP if, and it does not seem to be working. I specified the scope to be PHP, but I have to specify HTML as well, because the scope inside the text PHP by default is HTML, right? I can write any kind of HTML I want right here. So I think the scope is HTML. So if I just type PHP if, now it gives me the following suggestion. And if I hit enter, it generates the following code for me. So that's an important thing. You have to specify HTML right here. The difference between the global snippet and the PHP is that this one has a scope automatically PHP. Okay, that's why it didn't work first. Now, let's talk about my VS Code settings. Let's click on this gear icon and click on settings or control and comma. And we have a bunch of settings, like VS Code comes with thousands probably of settings. So I'm going to click this icon, which opens settings JSON, in which I already have configured my settings. And let's go through this. So basically, we say that I use icon theme, material icon theme. This is my color theme. And I'm disabling PHP suggest basic, because if you're using any extension like PHP Tools, for example, it gives its own suggestion. And if you don't disable PHP basic, PHP suggest basic, you're going to have suggestion 2 times. One, which is basic suggestion, and second from the extension. So I disable that, and I also disable the validation, PHP validate enable set to false, because again, the extension which I'm using does the validation. Okay, so for Emmet, I exclude the following languages. This is done, this is added by PHP Tools extension. Then editor format on type true. So whenever I type, I have to, I basically have to set this into true if I want Docblock to work perfectly in PHP Tools. Explorer auto reveal is false. This is my personal preference. Probably most of you won't like this and you want this to be true, but generally when I have the Explorer opened and I'm navigating between pages, I don't like the file to be revealed immediately. Okay, according to my experience, this is what I prefer. And yeah, as I said, this is my personal preference. And the explanation is that I had to work, and I have to work on really large projects where I have in the folder, I might have like uploaded files, like hundreds of uploaded files, and I'm copying the name of those uploaded files and putting them somewhere in the controller. So as soon as I open the controller, on the left side, I have those uploaded files opened. And whenever I activate the controller, it just loses my focus. And then I have to search, scroll and search where my files are there, because I have to click and copy and put this in the controller, okay? So that's why I prefer to manually reveal whenever I need, okay? And I can set this on my keyboard shortcut. All right, the next one is also my personal preference, and that's Workbench list open mode double click. So that's also something you probably don't need and you want it to be on single click. But again, I'm used to IntelliJ products where I open the files using double click. I simply want to, when I click, I want to select the file for renaming or for doing something. I just want it to be opened immediately. Okay, don't hate me about this. This is my personal preference. The next one is editor mouse zoom wheel. So that's something which doesn't come in VS Code by default, and I wish it would come. So whenever I click Control and mouse zoom, I want the file to be zoomed in and zoomed out. Okay, and by default, it doesn't work like this. Okay, the next one is quick suggestions, and this is really handy. By default, the quick suggestions only supports in normal code. So whenever I start typing in something like for example, I have a login form right here, and I start typing login form, and then it automatically suggests me everything. But the quick suggestions doesn't work in comments and in strings. And this is really handy, okay? Sometimes when you start typing something as a string, you want the suggestion to work as well. So this is what it does. And this one, editor guides bracket pairs. This is, by the way, a slightly new feature. And previously there was an extension for this purpose, and this highlights the opening and closing bracket. So if I open my site controller again and I click this, it matches the bracket pairs, and it highlights them. All right, the next one is minimap scale. The minimap is the most useful thing, and I really love, and this is the minimap, and I have the scaling set to 2. By default, it is 1. If I change this into 1, you see that minimap actually reduces in size. I prefer it to be larger. Okay, and minimap show slider always. That indicates that this is the slider which is always visible. Okay, by default it is not visible until you mouse over on the minimap, but I prefer to always visible because whenever I have a large file, I immediately see in which part of the file I am right now. Right now I am in the middle of the file, and I immediately notice that. Okay, the next one is terminal integrated default Windows is Git Bash. Okay, so the new terminal basically by default on Windows opens PowerShell, and the PowerShell is not as powerful as Git Bash is, and I prefer Git Bash, so I set this into Git Bash. And by the way, you can set this to Git Bash by clicking this arrow and then select default profile and choose the Git Bash. All right, the next one is default formatter, and I basically set the default formatter to be something. By the way, this is not correct, so that should be PHP Tools. DevSense PHP Tools VSCode. That should be the default formatter. And if you use like PHP Tools, you set the default formatter to be PHP Tools. If you are using like PHP Intelephense, you're gonna set the default formatter to be PHP Intelephense. Or I can even set the Prettier. Where is Prettier VSCode to be the default formatter. However, for PHP files, I'm going to set the PHP Tools to be the default formatter. I think that's the most accurate way. And these 4 settings are basically, this one is for cursor blinking. So if you notice that it fades out and then appears slightly, that's the blinking. If I just remove this line, you see that cursor immediately blinks without animation. Then we have the cursor style to be line, which is by default line as well, but we have a couple of other options like block, for example, and now you see how cursor looks like. And we have the format on save. I don't want the files to be formatted on save. Again, that's my personal preference because sometimes I have to work on a really large files which is unformatted, and if I format then push, there will be tons of changes in the merge request, and this is something which I don't want. And the line height, and it's 22, that's my personal preference. If you increase this, you're going to increase the line height between the lines, as simple as that. All right, that's my VS Code settings. Now, let's talk about my keyboard shortcuts. Let's open keyboard shortcuts, and I'm going to open the JSON file in which I already configured a couple of shortcuts, which is my personal preference. You might have different shortcuts, and if you have, that's absolutely fine. I'm just sharing what type of shortcuts I use. The default shortcut for deleting line is Ctrl, Shift, and K. This is something I don't want, So go in the keyboard shortcuts and I search for delete line and I set this into Control and E, as you see it right here. And whenever you basically set a keyboard shortcut from here, right click and change key bindings, and you set Control and E, hit the enter, it's going to automatically create a second object in this JSON, which will have a minus in the command. So that basically means that Control Shift and K should not work when deleting lines anymore. Okay, this is just disabling the default shortcut, and this is just mine. And I have Control and D set to duplicate line down. I have Shift, and by default that was Shift, Alt, and down to duplicate line down, and that was simply removed. I have Control, Shift, and down to move the arrow, to move the line down and up, just like this. So I hit now Control, Shift, and arrow up and arrow down, and the line is moved up and down. Okay, and the default was Alt and down and Alt and up, and that was removed by VSCode with the minus in front of the command. And Control Shift up is obviously move line up, and previously it was Alt up. And I have Alt and Enter inserted for quick fix. So this is the default one for in JetBrains products if you want to, for example, import a file. So if I just remove login form from here, and let's say that now I have an underline and I want to import this, I'm going to hit Alt and Enter and then hit the Enter immediately, and the login form will be imported. Okay, the default behavior is Control and dot on this, which was removed. And Alt and J, I set this to match next selection. For example, if you go again in the side controller and I look for get method and I hit Alt and J, this will find another get method in this file and it will mark it as well. Now I have like few get methods, and I have multiple cursors as well, and I can change all of them to whatever I want. Okay, and the default behavior for this was Control and D, which was removed. And I set Control and 1 to toggle the sidebar visibility. The sidebar, the left sidebar, by default, the default keyboard shortcut is Control and B to open and close it. I set it into Control and 1. And now using Control and 1, I can open and close the sidebar. Okay. And right here, each tab inside the sidebar has its own keyboard shortcut, like Control Shift and E activates the Explorer, Control Shift and F activates the search. By default, the version control system was set into Control Shift and G, and this is my last keyboard shortcut, which I configured. Default was Control Shift and G, and I changed this into Control Shift and C. And whenever I hit Control Shift and F, this is searches, and Control Shift and C opens the source control version control system. Control Shift and D activates the debug. Control Shift X activates the extensions, and we have the Remote Explorer and others which simply don't have the shortcuts. I think the RapidAPI has the shortcut Control Shift and R. All right, so these are my keyboard shortcuts. And one very, very important thing because of which I really love VSCode: to save your extensions, settings, keyboard shortcuts, and pretty much every kind of configuration into cloud. And I'm gonna log in right now using GitHub. So you basically click the user icon in the bottom left, turn on settings sync, then you will authorize using like Microsoft or GitHub, and then it will be synchronized into your GitHub, which is awesome. Generally, you should do that. You set up your extensions, themes, settings, and everything once, then log in. And whenever you log in from another VS Code, from fresh new installed VS Code or from a new work machine, that's going to be synchronized into your computer automatically. All right, guys, if I miss any extension, please let me know in the comment section down below. If the video was helpful, please hit the like button. And if you want to see more videos, please hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next time.